All right, live from Dogleg Brewery in Fort Worth, Texas, it's time for You Can't Brew That on Television. And now, here's everybody's favorite brewmeisters, the host of your show, the Reverend Ryan Bono, and Kyle, whatever the heck he watched last, LaPointe.
Hello, beer lovers, and welcome yet again to Dogleg Brewery for another exciting episode of You Can't Brew That on Television. We are your hosts. I am the Reverend Ryan Bono.
And I am still Kyle Thor LaPointe.
Kyle Thor LaPointe and I are here to help you bridge the gap between beer snob and frat boy. And actually tonight, we're going to be bridging the gap between beer snob and sports fan.
True.
We've got a lot of sports stuff going on tonight. It's a very exciting time in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. The Oklahoma-Texas game was played this last Saturday. You may or may not have heard about that. It was a little bit of a beatdown, but we had fun watching it.
We did, very much so.
And then, right this very moment, the Texas Rangers are fighting for their lives in the American League Championship Series. We've got that showing over here to
so
our left.
we'll be monitoring this right now, and Neftali Felice just allowed a batter to the first. So
exactly. So we've got a lot of other actual beer-related stuff to talk about, too.
Sure, and we'll intermerse that amongst all of our frequent agape, jaw drop, looking over at the screen while you guys are out in the world not knowing exactly what we're looking at. But for those of you who are paying attention, today is October.
Today is October.
The 10th or 11th? I don't know what days it are.
The 10th.
It's the 10th. It's 10-10, 11. And the Rangers are in their ALCS second game. Going up by 2 would be very, very, very good. Hard for a team to come back when down by 2 in any sport. So we're hoping that will happen. It's in extra innings now. But until then, we're going to talk about exciting news for Dogleg Brewery, which is the new brew rig. Spent some time yesterday, finished up the new brew rig, got it all welded up, welded the, basically there's some all threads that I've got running the burners, so the burners can be adjustable on their height. And I think after brewing today, and we'll discuss this a little more, I think that's going to be very, very important. Because those burners, those banjo burners, are so freaking hot. I mean...
Did you put your hand on it? Was it hot?
Well... The brew rig stands a little lower than this table, and I went above that and put my hand up like this when the burner was on low.
Yeah,
and it singed arm hairs.
That's pretty hot.
It's pretty hot. And so, Rich, you want to go to a photo of the new rig if you haven't already?
Yep, you got it. I'm showing the wide picture.
Okay, there it is, right there. The Bono, you want to discuss the basic design of what this is? We went back and forth with a few options.
Yeah, we did go back and forth, and we brewed on a few other people's rigs, and what we ended up deciding on is a two-tier brewing system, and you can see that there in the photo that we've got 2 kegels up top, and that is where one of them's for circulation, right, during the mash.
Well, you've got, this is a basic brewery, so, we can technically call this a brewery at this point.
Yeah.
It has a hot liquor tun, which is in the center, and the hot liquor tun warms hot water. That's all it does, it makes hot water. The mash tun is on the left, which is where the grains go. So the grains will go on the left, and they'll be converted into sugars in that. And then once they're done there, they'll be pumped back up into the far right, and that's where the boil kettle is, and you boil on the far right. So the pumping right now, the only 2 necessary pumping is when you are brewing or when you're sparging and when you're so you're sending the liquids to the boil kettle and when you're actually mashing, because I'm recirculating the mash. So instead of having liquid sit on those grains and then draining liquid off and then adding more liquid and draining it off, which is what our previous method was, it's a lot faster. As soon as you've got all the liquid, it's already going. So the Vorloff is already going. It's crystal clear by the time you're done. The amount of extra junk you get in there is just, it's all but gone. It's really, really a neat system when you do fly sparge, when you do a really legit fly sparge.
Yeah, we had the chance to brew on a system similar to this with our friend JB, and we were really pleased with the way it worked. I remember that it really clicked for us that we finally decided that this was the way that we wanted to go. And so Kyle has spent a great deal of time over the last few months trying to get this thing put together, and it sounds like he's ready to enjoy the fruit of his labor.
Sure. One of the cool things is, they spend a lot of time on it, a lot more than I probably should have. I could have done other ways and made it a little easier. But what I ended up doing was, looks like 2 outs, by the way, now. But the runner has progressed to second base. So they moved the runner. But anyway,
Not that anyone's paying attention.
What I ended up wanting to do was allow the heights to be right. Excuse me. So when you have that hot liquor tank, you can actually turn it to the side and pour straight into the mash tun, which I think is important because that's a perfect height. That means it's just the right height where you don't have to worry about actually pumping something if you don't want to. So what ends up happening is when we're fly sparging into the boil kettle, you don't need 2 pumps. You just drain by gravity from the hot liquor tank on top of the grains, and then the grains are sparged through that water, and you just adjust the flows, and it's super simple, super easy.
Absolutely, and we're really pleased with the way it's worked so far, and looking forward to the bottom of the 10th inning. Brewing on it again.
Right, one of those 2 things. Out of the inning.
One of those 2
Focus,
things.
come on, man, focus with me.
Yeah, sorry.
Right here.
Sorry, it's like we said, it's gonna be a tough night. We're so excited about sports here.
You're doing such a great job.
It's amazing, the sports in this area right now. I'm just so stoked about it. The Cowboys are looking like the Cowboys, and the Rangers are looking like the new Rangers. Are we expecting a playoff team every year?
The Cowboys just have a really amazing stadium.
Right, it's a really cool,
really neat
screen.
Yeah,
screen. So and that good for them. Good for them. Not everybody has a screen that big.
Best thing about the Cowboys is their logo.
They've got a cool logo.
They do have a cool logo, and that logo actually is on the field in the big stadium.
You can stand on it.
So
if you pay enough money.
Yeah, that's true.
Because we got to hire some more coaches next year.
Or if you get paid enough money, you can spike a football on it.
That's true.
Let's talk about this beer.
Okay.
Because I'm excited about this beer. I actually brought this beer down with me from a trip up to Oklahoma.
It's really good.
It's very good.
I wasn't even thinking. I'm just sitting there drinking it, going, it's pretty good.
This is it tastes like a German style half of Weizen to me. I'm going to go German. Is that what you would get out of this?
Yeah, but they didn't overdo it. It's got some of the banana and clove, but it's enough to where you could call it American if you wanted to. It's not going to score high enough in either because it's not in your face with the banana and clove, but it's also not there.
Okay.
So I wouldn't even call it American.
And let me talk about the beer here for a second, and let's discuss the banana and clove and what goes into that, because some of our viewers might not understand what we're talking about there. So
bananas are fruits. They grow on trees.
Yes, they do.
Cloves
there it is.
Cloves are a style of cigarette that you smoke.
Well, they understand it now.
Okay.
So thanks for clearing that up.
You're welcome.
Anyway, there's a town in southwestern Oklahoma called Mears. And Mears essentially consists of one building, which has a restaurant, general store, and post office.
Oh, sure. Well,
and because it's a rural town in Oklahoma.
Right.
And at the general store, you can get bottles of this beer, which is called Mears Gold. And they've got a Longhorn there on the label. And you might think it's interesting that they would have a Longhorn on the label in Oklahoma. But this particular restaurant is famous for Longhorn burgers and Longhorn steaks. They're very proud of the frequency with which they eat Longhorn up there. And so
that happened last week too. A lot of Oklahomans
that did, and that is why I selected this beer tonight. So it's to segue into the discussion of Bob Stoops having Longhorn burgers for lunch on Saturday.
All right, Boomer Sooner out there, everybody!
Sooner.
What a game! It's very interesting when in a game of that high caliber and that quality and that ranking, number 1 versus number quote unquote 11, a joke, but anyway. You expect, just from the rivalry factor, that's going to be a 2 or maybe 3 score game. And it just wasn't. It was just ridiculous. To have a game like that be such a blowout is not normal. Very much not normal. It's only happened, 3 times that Stoops has beaten?
Yeah, it's only been 3 times.
In the last 10 years. So it doesn't happen very often, maybe 30% of the time.
Yeah.
But... we enjoy it every time it does happen. And it seems to always happen with a different running back running over them brutally. Peterson did it once. Quentin
Peter.
Griffin and Whaley this time.
Quentin Griffin was unbelievable.
Oh, that was crazy, his 5-touchdown
Yeah.
game. You just hand him the ball and he's in the end zone. You didn't have to run.
So, banana and clove.
Banana and clove.
We're gonna try to bounce back and forth as much as we can here and just confuse the ever living bejesus out of you. When you say banana and clove, everybody knows what bananas and cloves taste like, smell like.
Right.
Why is that in this beer?
Well, it's because it's one of the 3 different styles of yeast that there are that produces those off products or byproducts when they're actually producing alcohol and carbon dioxide from the sugar. So
And sometimes those byproducts are unacceptable. That you do not want them in most styles of lager, for instance. That
this would be you would not use this yeast for the lager.
Yeah, you can't do it because lager is supposed to be clean and crisp. And when you say that a lager is clean and crisp, what you're saying is that you're not getting those weird byproducts from the yeast.
Yeah, the yeast is basically neutral. Is the best word to describe a lager yeast. It's a background note. If you notice the yeast, it's only because you have a palate perceptible enough to notice that yeast. The average everyday drinker will not notice the yeast in a lager.
Absolutely. And when we taste a German style Hefeweizen, we actually are looking for these banana flavors and these clove flavors that they're actually desirable. It's a part of the style that people have. It has become really synonymous with the style. And I think you're right. The more drinking, I think this is a little bit of a hybrid. I feel like the clove is really big in this. I feel like the clove is bigger than you're making it out.
You know what I think? What I'm getting out of this is that it's a higher temperature American wheat yeast.
Okay.
So you've got more fruitiness, which also can bring in cloves because of the high temperature. And I think that's probably what you're tasting too. So it's good though. It really is pretty good.
It's a fantastic beer, and it's a really neat place. I encourage any of you who are ever unfortunate enough to find yourselves in Lawton, Oklahoma, to make the trip up to Mears because Longhorn burgers are delicious.
And there's nothing else in Lawton anyway.
Then there's nothing else in Lawton anyway. And Longhorn burgers are actually lower in saturated fat and cholesterol and higher in protein than chicken breast.
Really?
Yes, absolutely, because they're all grass-fed, naturally grown Longhorn meat.
Yep.
And it's just amazing. And
Yeah,
they've got an amazing beer that you can wash down your burger with.
And I will be going down and picking up our quarter of a cow here this week.
Excellent.
And anytime you get grass-fed meat, it's actually phenomenally better for you than grain stuff. And it cooks different. It's really weird.
It really does.
I'd love to just do a little sideshow one time about grilling a steak side by side. That's the same thickness and same
let's do
cut.
that.
Because what I've found is I've had to completely change all of my grilling techniques since we do all grass-fed and finished beef. So it's pretty neat.
So one of the things that Kyle did today, Kyle brewed.
I brewed today.
And
I'm off this week. I'm playing hooky.
Yeah,
I got a
he's-
staycation going
He's
on.
doing the staycation deal. And so with the malts that he used today, he actually malted and kilned his own malt. So let's talk a little bit about malting and kilning.
Okay.
And sort of in general, and then let's discuss your processes.
Sure.
During the malting process, barley that has been harvested is soaked in water and left out in gigantic, basically vats to soak in water until it starts to sprout. And so, because really what you're doing is you're taking the seeds and you're getting the seed growing.
Mm-hmm.
You just start that process, and then you have to kill it. So you kill it by kilning. And there's different ways of kilning. We always talk about the Reinheitsgebot, and what that declared was that you could only have 3 ingredients in beer. And of course, later, with the invention of science, they discovered that it was actually 4.
They didn't know about yeast.
They said that you could only have 3 ingredients, barley, water, and hops. And I remember telling somebody that one time, and she said, well, so basically you could only have 1 flavor of beer.
And
I said,
no.
Because the kilning is where all of that changes. So you can either kiln your grains at a very low temperature for a very long period of time, like we were talking about last week. A lot of your European malts, your Pilsner malts, very, very low temperature, a very long period of time, so that they slowly dry out.
And then they can also be, they do different things for different, the difference between a Vienna and a Munich and a pale malt and a American 2-row. They may start at 130 degrees kilning, and then for the last 30 minutes they ramp it up to 180 and then kit and shut it off, or they may start at 150 and stay at 150, or they may start at 180 and stay at 180.
Exactly, and that's how you're going to get your different flavors out of the same ingredient, is just essentially how it's dried. So,
Sure.
Kyle, you were able to malt and kiln your own grains.
Right.
And I hope the kilning went better than our toasting attempt.
Than our kilning that we literally burnt our grains. And by the way, everything I've ever read says a month or at the very soonest from kilning something that you should use it in a beer. And the beer we made with it the same day we burnt the crap out of that.
It's pretty good.
It was pretty good.
It was a pretty good beer.
It was if you turned it in for the category we would have put it in, would have been in the low 30s.
Yeah.
For being as haphazard and thrown together as it was.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's pretty
I
good.
wasn't complaining.
So
let's hear about your experiences. What method did you use? How did you sprout and then kiln?
Well, basically, my wife helps me, and she does most of this. I help out a little bit, but in her process, the main difference is that she never soaks a grain. What happens with the commercial grains, they soak them overnight, and then they start the process, but when they're soaking them overnight, they end up doing that at a lower temperature. And then when they're sprouting them, they also do that at a lower temperature.
Mm-hmm.
But then they bring it up to about 90 degrees, and that's when the enzymes are really going, and then they dry it for about a half a day to a day. And all of that takes roughly 3 to 6 days. Then the kilning comes in. When it's dry, just as soon as it's dry, they kiln it. And in Megan's process, what happens is it takes usually about a day and a half to 2 days for the entire soaking and sprouting process, because we do it at a higher temperature. And the way she does it, she doesn't actually rotate the grains so they get hotter in the middle.
Right.
And some of them will be cooking, basically. They'll really be growing fast. And after it's all done, we'll dry it in a whatever you call it. I'm drawing a blank for it. But the dehumidifier, whatever the thing's called. No, the little air dryer, basically, with the little heater in it, so it can only go up to about 120 degrees. And that's not quite enough to be called kilning, but we dry it out, basically. So they're dried out. They're really not truly kilned. So that makes it where it's actually beneficial for us to be able to do that and then immediately use it in a beer. But the neatest thing today, and this is now the third or fourth time we've brewed with this, and I've always monitored the ingredients and the efficiencies of our mash. And I found, using this was 8 pounds of a 21-pound grist. So you're talking a large portion of what we were doing. And in doing so, found out that the efficiency in that, I get about 20 to 25% of the efficiency I would get using a kiln stirs malt.
Okay.
So buying the wheat malt, or what in this case it was rye malt, buying the rye malt from the distributor, from somebody who's a maltster and a professional kilnster, we probably would have gotten like an additional 80% worth of efficiency from that. So it's a huge difference there.
That's a pretty significant difference.
Which tells me the fact that they take 6 days to sprout their grains and we take 2. That
Right.
basically is where it's at.
That's going to make that's going to make a big difference.
And I'd say from reading, basically, we go a little overkill, and it actually processes. We make the roots grow, or the rootlets grow out a little more than what they do in the grain and malting and kilning industries. So part of that is that the plant has actually eaten more sugars, and part of it is that we're going pretty quick.
Excellent. So what? Any lessons that you learned? Anything you're going to carry with you the next time? Or are you going to try this again?
You know what? One thing that I'm looking at this and saying, what this would be very, very, very good for. People always talk about using a certain amount of wheat in most beers because they talk about putting this dextrin malt and different things in there to produce a bigger, fluffier head on their beer. I would say that putting, 4 to 8 ounces of home malted wheat in your beer would mean that you're going to put very, very little of the proteins or of the actual, taste flavor and actual sugar content of the beer, almost negligible. So you could put a handful of that 4 to 8 ounces into your beer, not contribute to the sugar content of your beer, and still get those plus qualities from the proteins that will be helping.
So you're going to build up your mouthfeel, and you're going to build up your head retention. So yeah, I mean, I think that would be great.
You could get that higher amount of protein that you want in the beer without having the negative effects of all the extra sugar and the changes of flavor that add from wheat and making it a little more sweet on the palate. So I'm thinking that, in a lot of our recipes that we need more head retention, we'll probably be putting home sprouted wheat instead of using the stuff from the store.
Excellent. So we will be doing this.
Sure.
Yeah, fantastic. I look forward to doing that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the iron mash. Those of you who've been watching the show for a long time are familiar with iron mash. We've talked about it in the past. We talk about it a lot because it's awesome. I think we might talk about iron mash more than we talk about bluebonnet.
I would say so. It's something that you and I think is a more true expression of your ability to brew.
I think so. Because bluebonnet allows mistakes and iron mash doesn't.
That's true.
And let's explain why that is. First, how about you talk about the bluebonnet? Let's say I want to make a beer and I want to take it to the bluebonnet. What am I going to do? Let's just start. I've made the beer.
Okay.
And I aimed for a certain style. And then...
So in bluebonnet, you've made a beer, and now you want to enter it. You know it's tasty, right? You go, it's a damn tasty beer. I'm going to enter it into a competition. You were trying to make a...
Vienna lager.
Vienna lager. And guess what, man? You went a little overboard on the hops. Not too much, but definitely overboard on the malt. So you end up with a lot bigger Vienna lager than you anticipated. You just made an Oktoberfest. You start reading the styles, and you go... Oh, damn, I made an Oktoberfest. So you enter it as an Oktoberfest, and you may win. Iron Mash, you can't do that.
Because at Iron Mash, you have to do what we call calling your shot.
Mm-hmm.
And what's going to happen is we're going to show up at the Iron Mash here in just a few weeks, and we're going to be given... Well, what are we allowed to bring this year? Is it just yeast? I remember one year they let us bring yeast, and one year they didn't.
Right, they're done with the yeast. Right now, they're still providing yeast.
Okay.
So they are doing that.
So all we're allowed to bring is our brewing equipment. We can bring a laptop.
We can bring water if we want. If we want to bring our own water, or we can bring a filter to use for their water. We can also bring yeast nutrient.
Oh, okay. Yeast nutrient.
You can bring yeast nutrient or like...
Irish moss.
Okay. We can bring something that's considered a clarifying agent.
And so these are basically all the things we're allowed to bring.
That's it. That's the rules.
Very minute in what really goes into a beer. And so, I would liken it to we're showing up at a hamburger making competition. All we're allowed to bring is sesame seeds for the buns.
That's pretty much it.
And so what's going to happen is they're going to give us a big box of ingredients. And we're going to have to select from those ingredients, or we're going to have to pick a beer that we can make with those ingredients. And in those, let's get to the special ingredients here in a minute, because the important thing is that we're going to have to call our shot. We're going to have to stand there on brew day, and we're going to have to say to the judges, we are making a Vienna lager. And in 3 months, time to bridge the gap. In 3 months, when that beer is tasted by the judges... If it's an Oktoberfest, we are not doing well because we told them we were making Vienna lager and we didn't.
Right.
And so that to us is what makes us a true brewing competition. You can see we're really bridging the gap right now. For those of you who can't tell, we currently are opening a couple of cans of Pabst Blue Ribbon.
And I will continue with this tradition of bridging the gap, and I will let you move towards a beer snob and pour yours in a glass, and I will continue to drink mine out of a can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's.
Well, I drank Tall Boy, a PBR, out of a can a few weeks ago.
You're fine. I understand.
I prefer the poured out taste. I decided.
So the thing about this that a lot of people don't. Okay, so basically now we got special ingredient, right?
Right.
So just to briefly touch on it.
Talk about the special ingredients.
There will always be 3 to 5 different ingredients that will be involved in the process. Basically, it's Iron Chef, right? The whole premise, Iron Mash, Iron Chef. So you've got a different ingredient that you don't know what it's going to be until the game time happens. You may have an idea of what you're going to brew, but you go in there and you have all these special ingredients and you can't brew that.
And generally, it's something, a set of ingredients, a group of ingredients that are not typically associated with beer. Now, that doesn't mean they've never been put in beer.
Right.
For instance, a couple of years ago, we had last year we had peppercorns.
Peppercorns, what
now,
we wanted.
I've seen beer made with peppercorns, but not many.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Serrano
happen very
peppers
often. Yeah,
won the year
the
before.
Serrano peppers. If you go to Arizona, you go to New Mexico, you can get beer made with hot peppers.
Sure.
But doesn't happen often.
Right. And the idea, though, when you normally brew with fruits or vegetables or spices, you don't have to tell exactly what you're making. You don't have to say, I am making a Southern brown. You just have to say, I'm making a brown.
A beer.
You can just say a brown.
Yeah.
And so you kind of focus their attention on the fact that you're making a brown-like beer, which they will say, they'll associate with maybe having some toasted, some slight chocolate, some caramel. Any of that would be okay. Whereas the various substyles, amounts of that matter. And so you don't have to do that in an actual competition. That makes this even harder because you have to call your substyle in addition to that beer.
Because typically the way they judge a beer with special ingredients like this, and you and I judge, 2 rounds of specialties
2 or
last year?
3, man. They were a lot of fun.
I actually really enjoyed it. And what you're looking for when you're judging these is not necessarily the beer style itself. You're looking for how the special ingredient was mingled with the beer. So if you choose peppercorns and an Imperial IPA, you're not going to do as well as if you choose peppercorns with, say, a porter or an English brown or something that lends itself more to the ingredient.
You want them to match. You want them to be helpful to each other. You want them to be better, like we've talked about when you're pairing foods and beers. You want it to be better after it's all said and done. And thanks, Droid. And so basically what we're looking for when we're doing this competition, is we're trying to find, first we want to find ingredient that we like and that we can come up with a style for, and then we want to find that we have enough ingredients to make the style we want.
Absolutely.
Because there was definitely, like you talked about, peppercorns go very well in a porter and very well in certain types of beer that are in the darker ends. But there were no chocolate and no roast.
Yeah, you just didn't have the ingredients to make those.
So we ended up being one of the only groups that used peppercorn last year, which turned out to be in our favor. We made a good, solid beer.
Worked to our advantage.
Yeah, and we made this solid beer, and we used the peppercorn very, very well, and it worked. It worked. This year we're going to have, last year we had a quasi-brewer with us with Matt Robinson.
We had a spectating third team member.
Maybe made it 3 hours late and, forgot to show up when we were putting in the special ingredients and doing all that. But
he was there for the team picture, though.
He was there for the team picture. We made him. So past that, we now have a new third member who hopefully will show up on time, which is James Padron this year. So
he's going to wear his toe shoes.
Oh, man. I'm going to step on his toes if he wears his toe shoes. He's going to figure out what happens when the hot water ton accidentally pours on toe shoes.
Ooh, that sucks.
So we're going to be adding that extra brew. It's a fun event. You've got very limited number of groups that can compete. In fact, it's 24. So you've got 24 groups. Usually people have at least 2 people brewing, usually 3. 3, beyond 3 is a little more extravagant, but you got to have the people to take care of business right now. Got to come up with a design. You got to be milling the grains. You got to be doing 3 things at once all the time.
And it's a lot of fun. And I think last year we actually took first place. And I think our strength was not the brew itself. I think it was our recipe selection and our general strategy.
And the way we use our special ingredient methodology. We came up with a pretty good system.
Right. I was thinking that for strategy.
It's strategy exactly. So we've got the ability. We've used a lot of special ingredients in what we brew, and a lot of people don't really do that. A lot of people like to find a style, find a recipe, and brew from that recipe. If they use a special ingredient, it's from a kit, or it's from directly from a website that says use this much cherry juice in this. You don't have this much cherry juice. You may have twice as much cherry juice, and you have to use it all. So, what do you do? That's not what your recipes have ever shown.
Yeah, I remember when I first started brewing, back when I was doing all extract, I almost exclusively brewed with special ingredients. Every single beer I made had a fruit in it, or a vegetable in it, or some spices, or just something crazy.
Right.
Because I, for some reason, refused to make normal beer.
Well, and I've still got a little bit left. In fact, I floated the keg there on our nitro tap here the other night, but made a beer in honor of my daughter's birthday, which used raw cream.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic.
It was a really, really neat idea, really good beer.
Yeah, and it's something that quite literally nobody's ever done. Tried to find some questions to some answers I had during that on some message boards, and nobody had ever done it. So, I plan on posting some answers to that, and because
now
somebody may need it.
Now you're the answer man.
Sure. Dogleg is a beer pioneer.
That's right.
That's true.
We put our beer foot forward.
So we're getting close to the end of our program.
Yep.
What did we learn tonight?
Well, we learned that our brew rig is going to be very successful. We had a good brew day today, so I think a few minor tweaks and some adjustments over the years.
We
can
learned
make it good.
We learned that Longhorn burgers are delicious,
and
Bob Stoops dined on them Saturday.
That's true. We also learned that home malting is not that difficult, and you can actually have some substantial additions to your beer from that.
And we also relearned that Iron Mash is awesome.
Best competition there is.
So while we go and relearn that yet again, we'd like you to keep in mind that we are not professionals.
So please try this at home. October 30th. October 30th. Yeah. Say it after we play out.
This agitation, frustration, the memorization of the things I'm gonna do to you.
She's gonna keep us updated.
Okay. No, we can finish up.
Well, we have to do our teaser.
No, we do.
Yeah.